Okay, so this is a recording for the LNA meeting for February 18th. We're starting the meeting at 9, and I don't know if here you want to do a roll call.
I think I have everybody who's here who isn't, but I'll just check, is anybody on the line?
Okay, we'll just move ahead. Yeah. All right, so let's start with the voting items on the agenda before we get to the last new item. So we'll start with number 5, to hear, consider, and act upon the following appointment to the Ethics Commission as recommended by the Board of Selectmen, Hugh D. Crooks, who is actually an I, independent, corrected by looking at his application for filling the vacancy for the resignation of William Diaz III. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Kevin, seconded by Karen. Any discussion?
Seems very cool.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Why don't we take it to a vote? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any? Well, that's it. We have nobody else. So motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 6, to hear and consider and act upon the following appointment of an alternate to the Historic District Commission as recommended by the Board of Selectmen, Greg Valente, D, at 762 Hillside Road, to fill a vacancy created by James Accomondo's appointment to full membership. Do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Also agree, another good candidate, and he did his research.
Indeed, he did. Any other comment? Seeing none, let's take it to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 7. Here, consider and act upon the appointment to the Employees Retirement Board as recommended by the First Selectman, Joseph Quinn, U, 904 Reef Road, to fill a vacancy created by resignation of James Brown. Do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Also very qualified.
Yeah, all good.
All right. Let's take it to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Moving to item number 8, here, consider and act upon the following resolutions as recommended by the Board of Finance. Resolve that in accordance with the request from the police chief, a grant between the Connecticut Department of Transportation Highway Safety Office and the town of Fairfield for the Fairfield Police Department's Distracted Driving High Visibility Enforcement Program be and hereby is approved, and further resolve that the acceptance of the grant funds and their appropriation for the purposes set forth for the grant agreement be and hereby are approved. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Right.
Any discussion?
I'm just going to abstain on this because I think you just want to hear from the chief first, but
Me too.
I can't see where I would not approve, but for the purposes of this, until we hear from the chief, I'm just going to abstain.
Okay.
Agreed.
Sounds good. All right, so let's take it to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any in opposition? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Abstain. So it's abstained unanimously. Item number 9, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution recommended by the Board of Finance. Whereas the town of Fairfield's MetroCog have been awarded a grant for $5,000, I'm summarizing, for the Connecticut DOT's Active Transportation Microgrant Program for Fairfield Safe Streets Program, to be used for a public awareness campaign sponsored by Fairfield Safe Streets Alliance to increase awareness of dangerous driving and encourage behavior change by all roadway users. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
That's good.
All right, seeing none, let's take it to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Hear and consider following resolution by the Board of Finance. This is the Town of Fairfield authorized to enter into a ground lease for 75 years with Habitat Humanity to build 4 units of affordable home ownership at 385 Quincy Street and 409 Quincy Street with no cost to the town. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any discussion?
Can someone clarify again, what, there is no cost, there is no lease fee or anything for this? What?
Oh, I'm not sure if I know when you say that.
Well, just so I understand, so we're granting a 75-year lease with Habitat Humanity for the building of, but there's no payment?
No, because I think the town owns the land, it's leasing it at no charge to Habitat, and Habitat.
So Habitat can take away,
assume the cost of.
take care of some of the construction and taking off our list of affordable housing we then have to do afterwards. Okay. I just wanted to confirm if that was the case. Well.
So did you say take off the list?
Well, like, I mean, so if our, I'm not an affordable housing expert, but, and I probably haven't followed it closely enough to be honest with you. So if we lease that, the quid pro quo is we lease it for free, they build and they create affordable housing, so it checks off X amount of housing that we then have to do going forward, that's all. That's all.
It takes it off the.
Yeah, it kind of like puts it on the.
Yeah.
No,
puts it on the list, takes it off of further, reducing the requirements going forward. So, okay. Yep. Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, so let's bring it to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, so passes unanimously. Item number 11, to consider and act upon amendments to the vehicles and traffic ordinance, the camera safety device, traffic safety device. Do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a second? Any discussion?
I'm just seeing that there's still looking things out of my mind. Some days I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm for it, and the next day I'm like, maybe I got a reservation. So I haven't made my final decision yet, so I'm abstaining.
Okay. Make sure if there are any particular concerns or questions you have, if you can send them in advance, that would be helpful, especially for Chief Palomar to be able to be prepared to answer whatever your concerns are.
Yeah, I think I've got everything.
Okay.
I'm very much in the same boat, and I didn't know you were going to say that. Yeah, I'm kind of feeling that too, but so in terms of, can I ask you one or two of the questions now, or?
I think that'd be great.
Okay.
Why not?
Like, so we would start out at schools, right? And
so what we would
where are
start,
we starting?
so the next place that it goes is going to be to the town,
right,
to create a plan that the traffic authority needs to have a public hearing on, and then it needs to pass the plan. And we know that the interested party right now, and I'm waiting for any disagreement from the first selectman, is the Fairfield Police Department that has expressed that they want to start because remember, if the plan has to go to the state. So the first plan, it sounds like that's going to be presented for the public input part and to be passed and then sent to the state is just school zones, and that they have selected 6 school zones where they are proposing to put the cameras. So the next phase is the consideration of that plan where people can comment, weigh in. They will be working with the vendor ahead of they'll bid out vendors and then have a vendor who's going to help with the plan. Mm-hmm. And so at the public hearing, presumably they will come with more information, for example, about what the cost is and how the vendor is going to run the program and how the town is going to, or the traffic authority is going to interface based on statute, because you remember statute requires that a town employee, designee, sworn person is the one that's reviewing all of the potential citations. Mm-hmm. So then it goes to the state, and then the state decides whether or not we're allowed to proceed.
Okay, and those 6 school locations are already predetermined, or?
I imagine they're going to present them, but keep in mind that the ordinance that we're passing is simply giving the town permission to take this to the next step. It says that, we're saying that we approve of the town to have automatic traffic safety devices, that then the town has to pursue them according to the statute.
Okay.
And
but how can we start? Like, what's the threshold, or what's the minimal amount we start with? Let's say we approve the enabling legislation, so we go forward with a plan. Is that plan for 6 school districts or school locations?
And
Initial plan.
I'm going to see if First Selectman Gerber has any updates from what I understood from Chief Calamares is what they were interested in pursuing, as this is the plan that we're going to develop to send to the state.
Okay. Then my question is, and we don't have to discuss it now, maybe it's later, is how those 6 are determined, why those 6. There's, 2 high schools, 3 middle schools, 12 elementary schools. Why those 6? And will it build out beyond that? I know we've gone over a lot of this before. I did miss one of our LNA meetings due to travel, so there were probably some questions that I...
Look, you know what, I just want to make sure I understand, because right now the way the state statute is written, it can only go to school zones and then, like, what was it, pedestrian zones or something like
There
that?
are 4 locations where you can petition the state. That requires, as you know, a bunch of backup to justify your request in order to have them placed there. One is at intersections with a traffic light. One is school zones. One is the pedestrian zones. And like a school zone, you have to go through the state to get, or actually it might be the traffic authority, to identify, is it the state for a pedestrian zone?
No one has gotten that approval for pedestrian zone yet. That's what you said at the last meeting.
I'm not sure.
Now.
I don't know if that's 100% for sure, but you have to get a pedestrian zone isn't something that just happens. You have to be designated, and you have to, I guess, go through the state to get that approved.
We don't have any
No.
officially right now.
No.
Okay.
And then the last one are like high traffic areas where they've said, for example, a downtown, a community center. We listed a bunch of examples. So if we pass this ordinance, it means that the town is able to pursue putting a camera in any of the 4 locations that the state says you can ask their permission to do it for. Our town has indicated through Chief Calamares that they're interested in the school zones. The rationale for picking which ones might be based on the fact that you can't just say to the state, we want it here in the school zone. You still need a written justification with a bunch of other things to say. So, for example, they can say, when we post an officer there, we ticket a ton of people. We see that there's always people speeding. Right. So they'll include in the, and you will hear, yes, and you will hear those justifications when they have the public hearing, where I'm assuming the public will have a chance to ask for the town to expand potentially the request to the state to 8 schools. Maybe
why
they'll...
was it only 6 to begin with, and how did you even get to 6? Like, why is it not 2 or 10, or how did that get?
They eased into it because they looked at crash and speed data, and that's how they picked the 6. So they're on, on roads where people tend to speed. That's what Chief Calamares and Hector desired, is that they based it off of speed.
Probably like a Riverfield as
Riverfield, I think also white, fur that people speed. And,
okay.
Yeah.
So those are the 6.
Also, Notre Dame as well.
Okay.
On Jefferson.
Ward is another.
Were any of the other 3 categories identified as having, okay, we're going to have 2 in one of the, well, there's no pedestrian zone, at one of the stoplights?
No, there hasn't been, by Chief Calamares, no. is there a possibility for one of your traffic engineers, for the traffic authority itself to say, you know, it would be nice to have it here, and then it'll go through the process, not through us again. My understanding is it'll go through the public hearing, traffic authority, up to the state. I think that if you get a plan approved, it's good for 3 years. In that time, you can request an amendment. So I think you could potentially add cameras somewhere else in the 3 years.
I do believe that the police are planning to roll it out in other schools. So that is it for now.
So the plan is initially 6, could conceivably go up to all schools eventually.
If they can justify it.
If they could justify it, is there an intention to go beyond the school zone?
There's no.
It could, but there's no intention.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's even broached the subject. I thought that it was really difficult to do that, but like getting approved for a pedestrian activity, found it hard for a lot of work. So.
And the hardest one is actually the intersection one.
Yeah, a question on that. So like, for instance, like the post road is the state road, right? So do we have the ability to put cameras on those lights, or that the state actually controls like the traffic lights on the post road?
They do control traffic lights. I don't know the answer to whether or not we could ask them to do it, but I assume if they did, we wouldn't get the
money.
We wouldn't get the money. We probably wouldn't be involved, but I don't know.
No, I'm just curious.
That's a good question.
The state, because if the state could come in and say, hey, we're putting a light, regardless of whether we pass this or not, the state could come in and say, oh, we're going to put traffic, cameras on the lights downtown.
Because it's a state road or state.
That's my question, because the state road.
Both, they state road and they control the lights on the state roads. So whether I don't know why they would do that, but
They would have to keep in mind, like, part of the process is how do you not only send out the violation notices, but you have to manage the appeals process. You have to, again, the state has the review process, and that's what the state has told the municipalities they have to do. So.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I just envision, like, oh no, could this get out of like Mission Creek, where we now have cameras everywhere.
See, that's
my biggest
that's my concern. Because like, if you told me we're going to do it at the school zones, and
that's
that was it,
we're done.
Hey, that makes perfect sense. But the thing that concerns me is like crossing the Rubicon here. Like once you cross it, where does it go? That's the thing that I wrestle with, right?
With one of the concerns, is that attractive to those who want to buy our house and move in to town? Just one of the things to think about. Again, this is an ultimate scenario, but every intersection, every major part of town is governed by cameras, and people are like, oh, let's go to Easton. I'm just being a devil's advocate here, but yeah, I would think so.
Yeah,
but something like this that can be extended without necessarily an intention, but it expands and it creeps.
Yeah,
that's all.
I would
that
say,
would be a worry.
I think it's definitely. I'm always one for thinking of the worst case scenario. And in the instance of this particular program, I do think that it was designed, at least at the state level, to be conservative in terms of the bar to get them at all. And there are a lot of these like moments of people being able to weigh in or stop. I would also add that, the RTM can always repeal an ordinance. If for whatever reason our traffic authority decides to be crazy and like somehow the wheels fall off the bus, we always have the opportunity. And again, it's only for 3 years is the other thing. So presumably we have to resubmit a plan or something. The cameras can always be removed. It isn't as though I feel like we have put ourselves in a position that we cannot escape from.
It helps to maybe dull, but it helps to read the state statute in this, which I haven't done in a while. Michelle's really taken the reins on this, but our whole group that was working on this was nervous about the exposure to cameras. You know, we all were,
Yeah.
but there's so many safety steps that it made me more comfortable. So, you know, you might want to read it and say those dry, but it made me feel better that there's.
I would even take the somewhat opposite argument in that it could help, you know, stop or find criminals too. I mean,
They can't use that.
it can't.
Yeah.
Nope.
That was kind of a comfort.
Yeah, that is
actually.
expressly forbidden.
Yeah.
It's funny to me, because I think one of the police officers emailed us, what are these like license plate shielding things? Can someone?
Have you ever seen that guy? Yeah, you can, if you,
One out of every 5 cars have crazy license plate cover that is transparent to the human eye, but blocks out cameras, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
So you go through Easy Pass and.
Go through Easy Pass, go through red light camera,
I'm sure
whatever.
it happens. Kind of.
The only purpose of which is to violate traffic laws. I suppose there's some, you know, like someone could argue there's an aesthetic quality to it.
You're right, so it's not like you're preventing a police officer from seeing your car, it's just Easy Pass.
Right. And they're not a priori illegal under state law, but they're illegal if they cover up. Like it's not like you can't buy them, you know, but they're illegal if their purpose is to cover up or obscure. Yeah, right. So it's one of those. It's almost like a loophole, but
Yeah.
So, I did
Has to start it.
said that as far as the post-road state roads, that yes, they can, they would still require OSHA approval. And he noted that there are significant criteria that would need to be fulfilled in order to get approval for something like that.
So the town could still request.
There is a method.
Yeah.
It's not going to say in every single intersection and whatnot. You know, the intent, though, is clearly high impact school zones. And that in and of itself is going to take some serious time to implement and then understand, you know, benefits or drawbacks on before you start trying to put them anywhere else. I would just, speaking of the post road, as a piece of information, one of our police cars was hit at Post and Pine on Sunday evening when somebody apparently, as it appears, been investigating, but most likely pulled through a light.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is a problem that we do, not to say put them up, and that's just, it is a major, you know, issue that we're dealing with all over town.
And I would say too that, as you all know, like we get plenty of comments from the public about speed, and you know, nobody seems to be asking if we can make it go faster for everyone, and and you know, especially schools. It's so nice how many families can walk to school, and so we've heard, I'm sure you have too, from people that have had really, you know, scary experiences with that. So.
To echo what you said, I mean, it's good to think about the legislation. It's good to think about the, you know, logical possible extensions of anything we've done. But because of the temporal, the 3-year thing, and the general bent of it just being conservative, high bars to getting approval at all, I imagine it would be an extremely high, insurmountable bar to get approval for it in every little corner of the entire town. And also, of course, the RTM would be aware of this and have power to repeal the ordinance or, you know, otherwise try to stop this from happening. It doesn't sound like there's an appetite to do that anyways. I think there's enough safeguards in place. Also, the fact that it only kicks in over 10 miles an hour, so it'd be the 11th mile over the speed limit. The fact that there's no points on your license, and then for that first period, it's almost like probationary. You just get a warning. I feel like it's temperate in its approach, and not, you know, taking a sledgehammer to a mosquito kind of thing.
Do you like think that after time people are just going to know where all of them are, and so it'll be almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy anyways, meaning,
That could be
you know,
good,
it's
right?
it could be good, but like it's sad that we have to go to that level to get people to slow down, but after a while we'll be almost be ineffective such that they won't even collect the fines because everyone's going to know where they are.
I think Chief Palomar said something to that extent, that it becomes self-policing after a point, and you've seen it in other towns as well.
Well, how does it make its money back then? I mean,
You know, if we're not using it
Out of
so
towners.
much. Yeah, the auditorium.
In school zones? Yeah.
I think that'll be something that hopefully, when the contracts, the RFP goes out, you know, that should be a question that's asked, because you figure you have, I don't know how they're going to do it. You could pay for the cameras up front, you know, or you rent them, or, you know, so I would hope that someone's going to ask the question, well, what happens if in every one of these 6 areas we stopped getting speeders? Yeah, that's true too. So, well, yeah. The vendors should be able to at least answer that, because they've been installing cameras in other places. I'd be curious to know what it is too, and I guess we're going to have to go to the traffic authority meetings to find out.
Also, Chief Calamara said that, you know, they've seen a real big increase in bad antisocial driving behavior, period, since COVID, for whatever reason. People are driving more erratically, they're speeding, et cetera. So maybe this kind of self-policing is needed to get people back into like a sane zone. And it's especially dangerous now because you have giant cars. I mean, I have an SUV too, you know, with giant overhangs, very little visibility, especially for kids. So I think it makes sense in school zones for sure.
All right, let's bring it to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay. Moving on now to the new item on the agenda. So the first action that LNA needs to take is to vote on whether or not we are interested and willing to put this item on our agenda. To start, we're not even discussing the content of it. It's just whether or not we're willing to consider it. And
so, here's the thing, to be brutally honest, I didn't even know about this until I got here tonight, because I hadn't had a chance to look at my emails. So when I see, like, you know, abolishing the parking authority, it seems like somewhat of a big deal. So I'm not,
the
parking authority. So
We just formed the traffic.
I'm not willing.
I know.
I still got a chance to think about it.
well, I have a question. Would you be willing to vote it onto our agenda so that you can hear from First Selectman Gerber? We are able to phone in Attorney Pierce and Mr. Becker to hear what they have to say, and then we vote at that point whether or not we vote it out of committee or not. This will at least give us, we can always vote to hold on to it and get more information, but if we don't vote to put it on our agenda tonight, it means we don't even get to talk about it at all. So I would suggest that, I mean, we will vote on it. It requires a 2/3 vote in order for it to get on the agenda. So let's just bring it to a vote to put it on the agenda, and then.
So to vote for us to be able to discuss it tonight.
Correct.
And then on top of that, we can vote next week to accelerate it and vote on this, or we can choose not to and give it another month to talk about and vote following month, which you would normally do with a statute. But what we're being asked to do is next week accelerate it. So I guess I'm saying there's a few steps where we can pause and learn more information if we want to. This is just.
Yeah, I mean, I just literally have not read anything. In fact, you saw me get the wrong authority.
This is all there is to it.
So I don't know where this is going, but I personally, no matter what the ordinance is, that we follow the procedure of, you know, ordinances and the time frame and not speed anything up excessively for whatever reason, and go through the process that we go through, as we have been with a number of ordinances that have come before us. And personally, at 9:30 tonight, I really don't feel like you listen to another topic right now. I've got stuff I need to do at home, so.
We need 2/3.
That personally, I'd say no. Now, yes, we can be outvoted 4-2 here, so I might not have a lot of choice.
Can I make a motion to add it to the agenda, and then we can just see where that goes?
Need a second, too.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
All right, so now what we're just doing is put it on our agenda right this second, so we can have a conversation about it after the fact and then decide whether we want to vote it out or not.
Yeah, I mean, I said I didn't want to have a even special about it.
I know, but everyone else is going to have a vote. Yeah.
But that's the vote. I
Yeah.
understand.
All right, so all those in favor of putting the item on the agenda for discussion tonight at LNA, vote by saying aye. Aye. Any abstentions? Any in opposition?
I would say no.
Okay. All right, so it's on our agenda for tonight, just on the agenda, to decide whether or not we want to vote it out of committee. So I want to give an opportunity for Selectman Gerber to explain not only why there is a request to dissolve the ordinance that created the parking authority in order for the parking authority to get absorbed into the town instead. So I will let Mr. First Selectman and Mr. Becker. Oh, wait, and I have, my phone is recording, so let me see if I can text Phil. If you want to, oh, can I? Yes.
And maybe also why the timing is important. I'm sure that's part of it.
Do you need me to get an information?
I'm texting him to see if he's available, and then if you can call him, that would be great.
I think Board of Finance is done, right?
I don't know.
Oh, I thought you were.
They moved up the, item that I was speaking to number
Did they move
second.
up Phil?
Yeah, Phil was still there for.
Okay, so yeah, he should be available.
I'm going to need you to close because my phone is recording the meeting, sorry. If you want to begin.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of concerns about the parking authority, which became pretty evident. Some of the issues.
I'm sorry. Are you on the bridge? Yeah, so you can do that, okay.
Some things became pretty evident pretty early on, and my concerns only grew over the last year. Number one, the parking authority unilaterally decided to stop paying the town for the lease on the property on the north side of the Fairfield Center tracks. Started during COVID, which is understandable, but then continued on really just until recently. And it was supposed to be an arm's length relationship, but it truly was not. It was sort of a one-sided relationship. They just stopped paying. So that was one issue that sort of made me start asking questions like, what is this thing? And the second problem that I saw was I started getting a lot of complaints from residents about trash on the parking lots, mainly on the south side of the Fairfield Center parking lot, and asking us to take care of it. Multiple emails that had gotten really bad, so we were trying to figure out who's responsible for the trash. And turns out Fairfield, our administration, Parks and Rec, is responsible for trash in many sections of town. So we called Anthony Calabrese. He said, not me. I think it's DPW. Called DPW. Well, it's really supposed to be the parking authority. So talk to Eileen Flora, who is the head of the parking authority. She's an employee of the parking authority. Explained to us that she has a part-time guy who comes on Mondays, but he sometimes can't really get to it, and stuff. We get a lot of trash during the week, and then she'll call. She'll call DPW. DPW will come in and then pick up the trash. That sort of led me to start thinking, like, is this really an independent entity, or?
Yeah, can I ask you, Bill? So what is the relationship then?
So the relationship is not clear. So a lot of major cities, New Haven has a parking authority that it's big. They have got covered, parking lots. They've got parking garages. They've got metered parking. It's big enough that they have actually a separate authority with its own people. And I put a lot of that in here, so if you get a chance to read it, I think a lot of the, of my rationale is in there. Fairfield never evolved that way, so this was created in the late 60s, organizational meeting held in the 70s. John Sullivan, I think, had a vision that we'd have more parking lots in town, like paid parking lots in town. Never happened. So we have 2 parking lots at Southport, one at Southport and one in Fairfield, and it doesn't justify staff, so like a lot of staff, so they don't have their own maintenance people, construction people, and they rely a lot on the town to do a lot of the work for them.
So does the town appoint like the commissioner of the parking?
I appoint all the members of the parking authority. Okay. There are 5. So there are 5 members, and they're good people.
And they have other employees?
They have 2.5 employees that really concentrate on collecting permit fees, and that's it. So, and they sit in town hall, but they don't answer to anyone in town hall. They're not part of the budgeting process. As a matter of fact, when we asked them to come in to talk about the budget, it's the first time anyone had ever asked them to do that, and they had nothing to show us. Have never had an internal audit done, have never had the town attorney review any of their legal documents. So, they lease from the state on the tracks. We have these structures, and they lease those from the state for nothing, for in-kind services, to maintain those. And then they rent them out to Pachi and Wake Up Coffee and Naughty Dolphin and a couple other things. And those are not reviewed by the town attorney. So you can look in their minutes, and they just sort of go into executive session and agree to do things their own way. And we have this weird, I call it in here, it's betwixt and between. Like theoretically, it's supposed to be an independent authority, but Fairfield can't justify, the size of it can't justify it being encapsulated.
So where does the money go?
They have a trust fund for, part of it goes to the town through a lease payment for the property, and then part of it goes into a trust fund for capital projects that they haven't done much.
Capital projects.
So here's another thing.
Bill, didn't they rent out the parking lot? I mean, didn't they essentially lease the parking lot?
They lease it from the town.
From the town.
So on the north side, they lease from the town. South side of Fairfield Center.
They get paid for parking fees.
Right.
Monthly passes.
Right.
Else. So they get paid back.
And for a period of time, they leased the plane lot from the town when things were really
when there was an overflow need. Yeah. And so that they get paid back from the parking fees to pay for the lease, and then any extra goes into this trust.
They trust for capital projects. So, for example, they decided, to put in new HVAC at one of their buildings. Didn't go through the town purchasing. They just found their own guy. Went into executive session. Chose the provider, the HVAC company, and they're putting that in. So they do some renovations to the buildings, which even though they're leased from the states, they lease them for $0 but have to maintain them, and they can upgrade them. So they put in the HVAC.
So how big is this truck?
How big?
So their operating account is roughly $1.9 million that they flow money in and out of. And
So that's their operating budget for the year, 1.9.
That covers employees?
It can cover employees, but
they have a base amount in 2 different accounts. So one was roughly $1.9 million that they use it as an operating account because they don't otherwise have an operating account. then they have about $500,000 sitting in, what they consider to be the capital improvement account. So issues we run into when looking at capital projects that they may want to do, there's actually quite a bit that probably should be done, at the stations. You know, but they're piecemealing sort of in dribs and drabs out of it. And, you know, they've tried to make the argument that they, you know, that revenues are down in the post-COVID environment, except for the fact that their net position has actually increased year over year. So we had the same issue when we asked them to pay the full amount for the rental, which we had budgeted for, but they couldn't produce anything that showed that their net position was going down year over year.
So you don't even know what the revenue is?
I don't have it in front of me. I can pull it up.
And they can produce the revenue annually.
For the ticket sales.
Yeah, it's ticket sales, state parking, and permit.
And monthly, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of their permit parking would be done, what is it, in the June or something, or May, June?
I just did mine like a month or two ago.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
And they also sublet to those
The restaurant.
businesses that have to pay them in rent.
Company, yeah.
Who approves the leases to, you know, Pachi and?
They're these 5 people.
They have do they have one person who's, you know, in charge, like that?
Well, there's a chairman of the board, but the person that they've designated to, I forget the name for it, but they basically have an employee, a full-time employee at town hall, who runs the, you know, the operations.
So isn't there a commission, parking commission?
This is the authority. The authority is the commission. Yeah. It's like a board.
5 appointed people.
5 appointed people.
They need one worker at town hall.
No,
Two others.
It's a volunteer authority.
Yeah, it's a volunteer authority, these 5 people.
Mm-hmm.
They've got 2.5 people working at town hall that do mainly, you know, tickets and permit renewals.
They get paid out of.
They get paid from the authority.
From the authority.
Yes.
So it's the head of the authority, Eileen, and then 2 others who are sort of the employees of the authority.
The head of the authority, they're all they are all volunteers. So they hired Eileen, and Eileen has 1.5 people working for her.
Okay. So David, so their total cash position, if you will, is $2.4 million.
Actual cash on hand. They're closer. We can get you the exact.
That's when you say trust fund, that's what you're talking about, though, right?
Correct. And they take in roughly 1.2 million a year in revenue, and they have about 1.1 million in expenses.
What is the cost of the lease? Is it
$333,000?
And they could
from the town.
Yes.
So they're supposed to
didn't
pay the town $330,000.
They were supposed to, and they didn't. Yeah.
How many years have they not paid?
I mean, so they
did last year.
They paid a few months.
Finally agreed to pay after we basically backed them into putting basically the internal auditor or the external auditor when we were doing the financials, basically backed them into a corner and basically flat out told them we were going to book a receivable for that amount and we were going to record it. So our financial statements as a town, everything they do is off of our EIN, and that if we didn't record it as a receivable and essentially assume in a payment in the following year, that we would then in the future years not be recording it properly on the town's financials. Mm-hmm. That initially didn't get the point across, and then when they started to realize that we were getting pretty serious about sort of being fed up with it, the chair and the lead employee came and sat down and offered to pay the amount, and then started trying to negotiate what the next year's amount was going to be and trying to have that be lower. Again, with the argument that they don't have the ability to actually make these payments. We presented them with all of their financials because they all run through the town of Fairfield's books. So it's a completely open book. They're in our accounting system, they're in the financials, and continued to say, we're not looking to increase, but if there's a budgeted number, we're planning to keep the budgeted number. So that's,
I don't understand why they couldn't pay though.
Yeah, so
Why?
when you said like their revenue was
so just, and I think Bill alluded to it, and I know that our lease report came up and the Board of Finance came up a couple of times. This whole thing, we've never, we sort of discovered this to be a mess based on two different things initially. One, about a year ago, Bill gets a text message from somebody and says, the trash is all over the place, can you do something about it? And it created this wild goose chase for who was even responsible. In the middle of that, we also found out they actually hire a DPW employee before they come to work to go do some of their cleaning. You can't do that. There's FLSA. So it's an FLSA ticking time bomb for us, the way that they're in part managing. So you can't pay a public works director, can't work for the town doing the same general function, of which picking up trash at times is something our DPW workers do at a completely different rate. They get paid.
Even though he wasn't supposed to cover the area.
He's supposed to get paid his normal rate, and he's supposed to get, because it's in the town of Fairfield, and it's technically, might be in a different fund, but it's part of Fairfield. So in theory, once they should be paid their normal rate, and even if they were paid a different rate and somehow for this function, even though it does fall into our general DPW worker bucket, he should then be paid time and a half if they cross over 40 hours a week. So there's an issue there. So it created this finger pointing, Anthony back to, James Ryan to Eileen, right? It was just this never ending, and we're going, look, we just want.
Just want to clean up trash. And it just highlighted the fact that it's not a professionally run operation. It's managed by volunteers. It's not big enough to actually have more robust oversight. And it just, this entity has never evolved into, something like you would see in New Haven or even Norwalk with multiple garages.
So soon after going and having this, and we started having some questions, we go to a Board of Finance meeting where they notice that there's a massive hole sitting in one of the revenue lines. That has now sparked the Board of Finance at almost every quarterly, because it still hasn't been paid and then it wasn't being paid, right?
Yeah.
To start that, and now they're at the point of asking, well, okay, well, what are you doing about this? Because it's clear something's not really right with this sort of scenario that's there. So we could have taken them and said, look, they're finally going to pay. We had to keep putting this brief for them to make the payment. They make the payment. Fine, the trash bills, we know this issue and sort of moved on. I think we've been looking, and we've met with Public Works, we've met with the police department, we've been trying to come up with, what is the contract? Is it just make a department? Do we leave them sort of the way that they are? Do we integrate sort of different functions into different areas? And part of the timing of this does coincide with budget. So now we're sort of the rubber meets the road, we're building our budget. We really want to address that clearly this is not really even ever what they originally had sort of envisioned. We keep hitting sort of roadblocks every time we want to try to do something like it. So we're at budget time, so if we want to build a budget, even if the budget, generally nets out at the end of the day, this is the time to do it. Otherwise, it's a bunch of different transfers and maneuvering that the Board of Finance typically wouldn't do outside of the budgeted process. So, but the likelihood without an ordinance setting that in motion for certainly the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and RTM to take that up, it certainly could in an assumption that this was going to happen, but that's where we sort of said, look, is it DPW, is it the police department, what is it? You can simply take this and run it as a department right now and put it in the budget and have it function and have it be, have the town actually be able to have authority over what goes on, and then get all those departments to start to better work with them. So Public Works, there's no more question about who the garbage is. It goes on the rotation that every other thing does.
Can't you just take the money? If the town's money, can't you just take the money?
No, and I don't think we could take the money even if this.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be used for
this not, is it essentially a charter issue, because it's an organizational, departmental issue?
No, it's not in the charter.
It's not even in the charter.
Ordinance issue.
And,
Okay.
most
This
towns,
is the repealing of the ordinance.
So it's created by ordinance.
It was created by
Right,
ordinance, not
right.
charter.
And it's not required by state statute.
no,
It's optional.
most towns with what we have wouldn't have this.
So Westport, their police department manages the whole thing, and, so they have to charge a little bit less than Fairfield does, and, one down the line, there's just different constructs depending on.
Is there any cost to the town right now for having the parking authority in place?
There is, yeah. So, well, is there a cost?
Opportunity.
The cost, so they're not paying their own way.
Yeah.
So they have an issue with one of, their buildings. They call James Ryan, who's in town hall. He'll go build something for them. It's not really an arm's length, relationship. The town provides some insurance for them. They provide some insurance. The town houses them. They're in with TPC. They use our coffee machines. So it's not what you would expect. Like if you went into the New Haven Parking Authority, they would buy all their own stuff. They would actually buy land. They would build stuff. This has never evolved that way. So they're really part of the town, and they're kind of pretending not to be. And it's creating agita because I feel nervous that we would be liable for some of the things that they're doing regardless. And we can't get under the hood, and we can't even force them to use our town attorney or force them to use our purchasing processes. And so it just makes me nervous. The authority, look, they're good people. Nothing against them. It just has not evolved in the way that it was envisioned.
What are you proposing here?
So I think Eileen and her staff should just sit there and do their job as town employees. Then we would incorporate them in our internal audit schedule, and we would make sure they go through purchasing and make sure that their leases are reviewed by the town attorney. The change to the day-to-day would be minimal. And then our DPW, they would clean up as part of the job, and we could ensure that the lots would be clean all the time. And, we would look for potholes and we would, pave them.
So what you're saying, based on what you guys are saying, I totally get it and it makes sense. Quite honestly, I'm sort of like shocked that it's been going on like this for years and years.
This is one of those things. There are others. We'll talk about it some other time. One of those shocking.
But I my natural instinct is I don't want to rush things. I would like to follow the normal process. Plus, what I would also like to see as part of this, which I think would help justify it as well for everyone, is if you could put together like some sort of a cost justification for it. So like by incorporating these people into the town, right? Here's any additional costs that we would incur, but here's like areas where we could save, like they could use the Department of Public Works, that kind of stuff. So we just we see how it balances. So we see how it balances out.
I think it's so much on the margins. It's more internal control.
See, the thing is, like, you guys have dealt with it, right? So you guys know the full story on it, and I appreciate that. But for me, like, this is new to me in the last 2 hours. So I just, for me, I want time to think about it, absorb it, make sure we're asking all the right questions, so on and so forth. So, like, I don't want to change the normal process that we would go through. But I tell you right now, I'm apt to support what you're doing here.
Can I ask a question? So operationally, so instead of the parking authority collecting parking, pass fees and everything else, and then paying the town the lease, instead now would be this department which would collect the money?
No, actually, the authority doesn't do any of that. The authority is 5 volunteers who show up at a meeting once a month. Eileen is sitting in town hall. She will keep collecting. I think one change might be like now she's going out and looking at a new system for keeping track. She is planning to bypass our IT department Now, if she were part of the town, like, she would have to go through Dave Kelly, but none of her day-to-day is gonna change.
So-
And the authority itself it's like you guys coming here, and really, if you look at the minutes of their meetings, they go through, how many spaces were taken and what's the revenue. They don't make, the big decisions that they make are like selecting the HVAC company to put in a new HVAC system, and, they looked at the leases, for, the restaurants and those places, but, that's basically it. It's online. I think it's worth like actually going through. It's really easy. Just go through a year of minutes and you'll see.
So Bill, I commuted in the city for 20 years and did my semi-annual pass to the park train station, right? I know $350 or
Right.
so. I was paid at the parking authority.
Right.
Right, so the parking authority amassed this fund.
Yeah.
And then paid out of that, I assume, to the town, the cost to lease the parking lot, right?
The parking lot, do whatever capital improvements.
Okay, so now taking that out, you're just taking out the intermediary,
Yeah.
essentially collecting the money, paying the town. You guys would instead get the dollars, which is now through the automated machine.
Right.
Actually, I don't even know how people do it anymore, because I haven't commuted in those.
You get a monthly back, so that monthly pass.
So that doesn't change.
That would just be collected by the department.
We would make sure that our IT department had vetted the programs and all that, but right now.
It would flow revenue and expense through a department.
Instead of-
Like,
Is
there gonna be a parking department? Because don't we have to create that on the RTM too, if there's a
So
parking?
you wouldn't have to.
No, it could just
We
be-
could create that budgetarily, but that's part of the timing is that if we were looking to create that inside of this budget structure, and that has to go through the board of selectmen and then the board of finance.
But it would be either in DPW or within the police, I mean,
That was on the line too, if you're talking about the.
Are there efficiencies that you guys could get out of it, like from a technology standpoint? I mean, that would be my question, right?
yeah,
Well, some of it
absolutely.
is-
Controls and
Some of
service.
them are, we do think over time that there likely are some efficiencies. There are certain things that are not even directly what we'd identify as really a direct cost or efficiency, but in the way that we're operating and interacting with the department. So Bill mentioned the IT department, but also let's talk about the police department. So the police department should have some say and possible integration into what software they use. So they're looking at going to a new software perhaps. They have been, to some degree, actively, doing this on their own, with disregard for the police department's take on that. As a town, we're looking at ways to integrate the parking at the train station, possibly how we manage downtown parking, the transfer station, the beaches, all of these things with technology at this point from a license plate reading standpoint, you should be able to pull up and have a gate open and go through, or pull up to the dump and drive right by and then go to the dump and have a pass and have these things be through, the same or integrated systems when possible. They are sort of freelancing on this one, and it's been a real problem with the police department. When we told them on Friday that we were moving this forward, and the chief will be at the meeting next Monday and certainly speak to this at some level. It is not the relationship currently as maybe at one point it might have been the authority, so that's a problem. We can also talk about when the vehicle, so the police department years ago had allocated a police interceptor that was older to be utilized by the specialist specifically for driving around with a license plate reader to check all the vehicles, because now you don't put a tag up anymore, we just load the plates in and you're going to work, right? Morning. So when the engine blew in this interceptor, and they said, okay, great, you guys got to buy a vehicle. We don't have spare vehicles to just drive around the two lots anymore with our special. They said, no, you can provide one. And he said, well, if you want to help pay for it, we will. And he said, no. And the specials began literally walking through the lots without tags anymore, trying to input license plate numbers by hand This went on for months until at one point, after finding out that they've still not resolved it, I authorized taking one of the electric vehicles and putting the license plate readers on one of the electric vehicles and putting a, parking, a P like logo on it and said, well, at this point, whether they're going to pay for it or not, this is absurd. We're not even being effective in it anymore. This is not going to fly anymore. So there are things that we've had and ways we've had to sort of deal with them over the course of the last, year or so. The police department in particular, that I can't necessarily say that that's going to save money, but I can argue that actually there was a lot of probably enforcement and whatnot that when you're doing it by hand wasn't going to take place, but it just, we can't operate like that.
That's part of like cost justifying this whole thing. Right?
Yeah.
So if we're not, you think we can increase the parking violation fees, yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah.
So who checks it now? So if you go to the machine,
So,
and you get your like, who's checking all that these days?
so it is now special. They're using an electric vehicle with the LPRs in them. They do drive.
Using the town's electric.
They use it, but they use the town one. We don't do anything back to them. License plate reader.
Oh.
So they go through and it picks the plates that are in the computer system, and they check them that way. So it's all like
You still need a manual process to do all this.
you need a specialist to drive through the lot to do it. Things that we would like to start to look at, they're probably going to take a little bit of time to integrate, but if you've ever been to
So I'm looking at the dangling pass and saying, is that the right color?
And you remember a year where they had the bad ones and they melted too? That was awful. That was but if you go to like Stonewall Mall as an example, they actually now in the lot they're able to pick the plates up automatically without a body. So we're going to begin to look at that as we look at again, the beach parking lots and some other places like that. But you're either doing this in a unified manner or you're separating it out.
I think it's worthwhile.
Couple questions. This does not include the Fairfield Metro stop, right?
We don't own that, the town doesn't own that, and the state owns it, did not lease it to the town, so that's a third party.
Mm-hmm.
Although if that came up, it will come up in the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
We could bid on it, from the state, but
So take a look.
Jeff was on the RTM and all that with it.
Their discussion point on bidding on, looking at even any sort of a push was, they thought about it and then sort of moved away. For some reason, we thought, we look at that a little bit differently as, it's not even, like we use the same, I know it goes to the central station, right, downtown station, but it really does, as a resident, it's sort of mind-boggling still that that's just not all integrated in. So, we can't guarantee that the numbers will work or we'll get the state.
It's a different system provider.
But it is something that we will look at, from a town perspective, you look at it more as the quality of, lighting for our residents to just be fully integrated.
How many employees are currently being paid
By the authority.
Yeah, Eileen?
Eileen, and she's got 1.5 people working for her, so
1.5 people?
Yeah, two.
The part-time.
Yeah, that's
That's the
part-time.
part-time.
Would there be any intention to have a staffing change, or maybe in the future, but not immediately with this transition?
I mean, I don't know that they need more people we would be able to evaluate it because we're not in a position to do that right now, but if any of you have had issues with your passes, maybe there is something we should look at, but, we're just not involved.
When I did mine.
Yeah, we're just not involved at all.
With like the purchase of stuff like HVAC equipment, are they doing public, like bids?
No.
So they're just picking a company?
They picked a company. Yeah, I think they used, they looked at a list of state-approved bidders, but went with someone that they liked.
And is that illegal?
I don't know what the total value was, so I think they're allowed to do it. Usually not the way the town would operate, but if it's under a certain amount, they could.
And just to, because we're talking about costs, it sounds like there might be some opportunities marginally, like you said, to improve efficiencies and make this actually better cost-wise for the town. But at the least, it's not going to cost us anything, right?
There may be a cost for the second person, Eileen's full-time hire, would get, as an employee, she's not getting fringe benefits right now, so she would get fringe, but I think, net it's going to be minimal and probably offset by just better operations.
Revenue, if we just compare last year, the position was up by $100,000. So even a benefit, which is a charge, roughly $20 in our budget. So we're still not that out.
So if we vote to approve this, then it would be put.
That's actually my next question. So.
Well, you had questions though, right? You were raising your hand.
Yeah, but it's mostly at this point, I think it's procedural. So in a typical fashion, we would have this in front of LNA. We would decide whether or not to vote it out of LNA, and it would still sit for a month.
So in a typical fashion, this would have been put on the agenda a week ago, so you would have had more opportunity in LNA to look at it. You would have considered it. If you voted it out today, which would have been February, let's say I put it on a week ago, you would have, and you voted out today, this is February, it would have sat on our agenda in March, you guys would have presented, the presenters would have presented it in March as sponsors, and then we would have voted on it in April. Mm-hmm. Given that the timeliness when we learned this and all that, if it wasn't a rushed issue to the administration, then I would have deferred it till March. It would have been on your agenda in March. It would have sat in April, and we would have voted on it as a body in May. So that's when we passed the budget. So it's past that. So if you guys vote this out of LNA today, then next and somebody decides that there's value in passing it next week, somebody can make a motion on the floor next Monday to waive Rule 32, which is the rules regulate where it explains that the ordinance has to sit and go through all that process. And then someone has to second it, and then a 2/3 vote of the body has to approve waiving Rule 32. Then once we waive Rule 32, then we can vote on it that night with a majority.
Is there a possibility?
Yes.
For, let's say, we were to vote it out of LNA, but for it to but typically we would have Monday to discuss as a body without a vote.
Yep.
And then we would have March to review it again and then actually vote.
We could waive, someone could not waive Rule 32 on Monday and instead could waive Rule 32 in March, and then we could vote on it in March. If you guys voted out today, and we don't want to rush it to vote on next Monday, but we want a month to acquire more information, then we could vote on it in March, but we still have to waive Rule 32 in March with a 2/3 vote.
So we could, for example,
yes.
What could happen is on Monday,
yes,
someone could vote to waive Rule 32 in order to vote on Monday.
Yes.
With
a 2/3 vote.
With a 2/3 vote. Let's say it doesn't pass.
Correct.
And then somebody could then say, I would like to waive Rule 32 in order for this to be a voting item in March.
I think Phil's online. I don't know if that would occur tomorrow or if that would occur in March.
You there, Phil?
I don't think the body can, I think I heard the question. I don't think the body can vote on Monday the 24th of February to waive the rule in March. I think they'd have to vote on it in that meeting to waive the rule. So you can certainly discuss that in concept on Monday, but I don't think you could take that vote until the March meeting.
Yeah, so then March you would vote to waive the rule. Or you would just let things play out. If you guys voted it on committee today, you would let things play out and we would vote in April.
I guess.
Or you don't vote it out.
We're waiting until we had to vote on, we were going to try to vote on it on Monday, but you're saying now we can't vote in?
No. What we're saying is that if we vote it out of committee, it goes on the agenda for Monday. On Monday, there will be a vote to waive Rule 32 in order for us to vote on this on Monday. No, on Monday.
That'd be
So this whole,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, bypass, you know.
Well, apparently, if we, by voting, that's,
We'd have to- Any ordinance you could just do, and you could come up with an ordinance a week before and just bypass, waive everything and just do it that Monday. I mean, that's the whole point of an ordinance.
I'm gonna,
It's the whole concept of it, and to not do that.
Can I ask about the budget? So if we voted on it in March or even April, you still could do this through jumping all the hoops if the Board of Finance agrees or something, right? But what's the need for doing it now? I think I know
Yeah, so and we've had sort of some discussions on other items with the Board of Finance on these lines. Previously, if it's enacted, then they know it's concrete. Otherwise, they're putting something in the budget that may or may not pass. It's more of a hypothetical, and the point is to try to avoid to do that. So we don't know, maybe the Board of Select, if you want, let's just say you did, instead of February, you did March, if the Board of Selectmen would have, in theory, would have to agree to put this in, knowing that if it then fails, the Board of Finance can make an adjustment to do something with the department. If you went beyond that, it would get past the Board of Finance's dates to do anything at all with it. And I guess it would be somewhat doubtful that they would do something.
I guess I don't understand, still understand, but what do you mean by the Board of Finance wouldn't be able to do that?
Okay.
I don't understand, I don't understand the whole aspect from a budget standpoint, right? Is the question of whether you're gonna get a $330 payment or, $300 payment, I don't get it.
So we're gonna print the budgets on Friday, so still.
like this Friday?
Yeah, so, some of this, so whether or not we have, right now, there's one line item in the budget for parking authority, it's the payment.
Right.
So, this would then break it out as a page, you'd have a page on parking, and there'd be the 2.5 employees and their salaries, and so a lot of it is the format, but.
But what,
Construct the department.
I get, I get that, but again, if you do it in July,
Well, yeah, I guess,
maybe it's a little more complicated when you're doing your budget spreadsheets.
You would also, it wouldn't just be the Board of Finance at that point, even if it was self-supporting and netted out to zero or even had positive revenue, you will have to go through for this one department, you'll have to go through the full appropriation process for all the town boards at the time and construct an actual department. Bill can maybe weigh in on.
But that's what
how
we should
we
be
would
doing.
necessarily do that.
But Dave, why would the front, let's say now, if this has been kind of in the plan, we've just been thinking about it, why now?
Well, we've been actually looking at it, with legal review for, a few months, but.
Right.
Really, yeah.
But to come to us maybe in December, January, we definitely could, this is really last second,
Okay.
gun to the head type timing.
Yes.
And clearly, this is one of the things on your radar to change, maybe it has been for a little while.
Yeah.
It could have been brought to us November, December, or January.
We've been trying to figure out a construct. I think that there is a day where the construct may involve, even breaking some of the functions in some capacity, like police departments or something like that. There might be efficiencies that are there. The reality is after rounds and rounds of trying to work through what that would even look like, when push sort of came to shove here with the budget, it just, frankly, Bill said, just make them do what you're doing right now, make them a department, and let them be more functional and integrated just in the town, and you'll be more than just incrementally moving, the needle on it. And from a timing perspective, that basically put us right now. The answer is, we actually probably should have just said, we're going to do that and done that a few months ago, and if we had some other things, a better overall option.
But
so it became time.
I just think we should be following the normal process. What you guys say is it's a great idea. likely to wholeheartedly support it, but I think by going through all the boards, going through your normal process, at the end of the day, you're gonna get a better ordinance, and you're gonna give yourselves a better opportunity to hash out exactly how you're gonna create this department.
Well, they wouldn't go through, my understanding is, they wouldn't go through the other boards in order to, it's our job to rescind the
Yeah,
original.
but that's what David said.
Well, let's say you did that,
If
and
you can't do it in time for this budget.
Right, but no,
The
but,
appropriation's the issue.
yeah, so what they're asking us to do is to dissolve the original ordinance, for them to put the parking authority under the auspices of the town and to write the budget appropriately, so that the budget that they present to the Board of Selectmen at the beginning of the budget process reflects the change of moving the parking authority, so that we will see on the revenue side what we can expect to gain, and on the expense side what we can expect it to cost. My question to you all is, if Dave is saying to us that if, let's say, our cancellation of the ordinance occurs after the budgets have been approved and it's done, then it opens up a whole can of worms.
Right.
So the question I have is, when is the first presentation? Where do we have the opportunity to amend the budget to include this new thing, to give us more time to appropriately review this?
You know the date? I can't remember.
It's usually right at the April. I can check it.
Yeah.
Beginning of April.
Board of Finance.
So my
So,
question
right, so if we
then,
approve this in the March meeting, couldn't we adjust, the Board of Finance could adjust the budget?
So the other question is, if you put it in, it's entirely possible that the Board of Selectmen, knowing that worst case scenario, the Board of Finance could make adjustments if something didn't occur at that time. You might be able to put it in and then have the BOS. You know what I mean? Put in the proposed, have the BOS still okay, knowing that's a fail-safe. I think the Board of Finance would take sort of the approach that if it's not passed by them, that they would take it out.
My ideal scenario here would be that we vote it out of the committee tonight. We have a presentation on it on Monday. Then we do not approve it by 2/3 to waive Rule 32 on Monday. Have another presentation on it at the next meeting, the March meeting. And if people feel like we had enough time at that meeting, then the body will express that by voting 2/3 to approve it. And that's a fairly long time period. Everything you said makes perfect sense to me. I think we've expressed our reservations about it.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to make a motion to move this out of committee.
but I want to be certain I understand, because I can say that I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm not comfortable voting on this on Monday. So I
And we shouldn't.
no, I agree. But I want to be,
Legally,
no, well, apparently legally we can, but I personally am sharing the concern with this being a precedent that we can just,
I don't know, I still don't know if legally we can.
I don't know.
Phil is here, so let's,
On February meeting, that we could vote on a full ordinance by waiving everything and not voting when we should in April, or normally would in April. And then we could expedite it by 2 full months.
I'm not going to vote for it anyways, and I'm so lucky to pass, it's so lucky to pass on the anyway.
I want to but I appreciate the timeline. I think that I have confidence that with enough time, we can be given the kinds of documents we want to see to understand this better.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to vote on it in March, because I don't want to go through the mishigas. But I think we are going to have to still, and this is where, Phil, if you can correct us, if we were to not have a vote on Monday for the waiver of Rule 32, would we then in March still have this on our agenda because we voted it out of LNA, and then we consider it a committee, and then do we have to vote for the waiver of Rule 32 in that second March meeting in order to vote.
Yeah, because that's just the first month, so, right? So we would have to
Yeah,
do
so that would be, I think, so you're saying you'd have a full discussion at the February meeting, February full RTM meeting, and then the voting meeting would be March. I mean, that might be compliant with the rule, because then you have it held over from the February meeting.
So we wouldn't even have to waive Rule 32. If we just hold it and vote on it in March, we're in compliance.
No, we have to waive Rule 32.
In March.
In March. Yeah, in March.
That's not what I just heard Phil say. Can you say that again, Phil?
Hold on. No, I said, you're right as to what I said, but what the rule actually says is that ordinances shall be listed on the warning for 2 meetings and discussed by appropriate committees prior to each meeting. So to me, what that means is that it would have had to have gone to the full body before tonight so that all committees could discuss it. So that means that you would have to waive Rule 32 in March, because you will not have had 2 full months of committee discussion prior to, the vote, basically.
Right.
So,
we could vote, we could discuss it on Monday just as an extra discussion.
It's
Right.
on the agenda already.
Okay.
It's just that
I
the
was able
committee.
to add it to Monday's agenda because it's more than 24 hours.
Mhm.
So it's actually already on the agenda for Monday, but we can't vote on it. It's like, how
It'd be like
it's on our
discussing-
agenda.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it's on that agenda for Monday, but we can't vote on it because unless someone leaves Rule 32. But
Right.
it's physically on the agenda.
We can't vote on it because it's on the agenda like it normally is for L&A, which means the committees don't discuss it. So the problem is that the committees haven't had a chance to discuss it, which they would have done tonight if this was done last month. So we have to vote to waive the rule in March. And when is the Board of Finance meeting to look at the budget? We will have missed, if we were to follow normal procedure, we will have missed the Board of Selectmen budget hearing for this.
And what we most likely would do is put it in anticipatory that
Okay.
the Board of Selectmen may pass it through in that form. If they chose not to in that form, they could take out what we put in. The Board of Finance doesn't vote until on their budget. They don't actually vote until after the
March meeting.
After March.
What is the date that they do the final vote?
April 2nd.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's after, right,
Yeah.
So the Board of Finance would hear about this new department, they would know that this is coming, they would see it all in front of them. If it failed at the March meeting, they would most likely then take it out. If the Board of Selectmen had already taken it out, then they would, but it passes, then they would add it back in. So we set all those mechanics up, and we have that fail-safe to do the one extra meeting, which by the room across everybody sounds like the reasonable. It's quicker, but it still gives them time to answer these items and field more questions from our members on Monday night.
Marcy, if we don't vote this out of committee tonight, it's still on the agenda for Monday. There could still be discussion about it?
No, because it's still in your committee.
Yeah.
So
Still in our committee.
it has
Okay,
to
so
get
you can't be
voted out of
discussing
your
with the full body.
committee. Yeah.
If
Okay.
we don't vote it out of committee, then it is delayed by 2 months versus 1.
And someone at that meeting on Monday, I mean, I guess we're worried that someone could still try to waive Rule 32 at the meeting.
Absolutely. But if there's 6 of you sitting here today, I don't know.
But that's
Right.
where I'm not certain, and Phil, we would check with Phil. Could someone, if they wanted to, on February, waive Rule 32 and then bump it up by 2 months? And I think that's an extensive ordinance process.
Yeah.
If the question is whether you could waive Rule 32 in that Monday meeting, I mean, yes. I mean, the body could do that with a 2/3 vote. I mean, any of the rules can be suspended. This is just the requirement that an item sit over for 2 meetings is just an RTM rule. So,
Yeah, my other concern is the public doesn't know anything
Well,
about this or had any
then
chance,
there's
so
that,
this
too.
would give them a month to know and.
Again, I understand like from the budgetary and the aspect of it, it's cleaner, but to me, all that stuff can be done at the end of the process. Makes it a little
I mean,
more
that's my
complicated,
position too,
but
but let's
to me,
go, because that's getting late.
So I'm gonna make a motion to move this out of committee.
Second.
Madam Chair.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I will second it, but I can say that I will not be in favor of moving it faster than March. I definitely want to
me
have.
neither, but I think that the paradox here is that to have two presentations to the full body, we need to vote it out of committee tonight.
Yep, absolutely.
So
I just
if
want
we
to
actually want to get more
communicate
notice, we need to do it
yeah,
fast.
I just want to communicate to my colleagues my intention for Monday because I'm not comfortable voting this.
I agree.
My intention is what?
Yeah,
Mhm.
me too.
It wouldn't, and the two processes are moving in parallel now with the budget and the presentation of the Board of Selectmen and the passage or not passage of the ordinance by the RTM.
Yeah, that's good, seems like a good, maybe more work for you guys, but it's a good compromise.
You need to put this in.
all right, let's vote, 'cause I'm already in enough trouble.
Okay, all those in favor to move it out of the LNA signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Do I have a second? Yes. Okay, 10:26. Thanks, Bill.